My God, it's a new enough already podcast, and we're going to talk the big debate, Tracy.
It was huge.
Winners, losers, losers, winners, all that stuff. And if that's not enough, we have to talk about Ted Cruz coming out Friday and creating a huge shitstorm.
Excuse me.
Oh, what?
I think you mean turd tornado.
Oh, that's right. I apologize. Turd tornado. That, what I just did there, other than my mom passing away, this may be the worst day of my life.
My condolences.
Ted Cruz endorsed Donald Trump and all hell broke loose. We'll talk about that. Tracy, where can people find the Enough Already podcast?
Oh, you can find us on iTunes and now on Google Play. Also tune in, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Facebook, and at enoughtalreadypodcast.com.
All right, enough already.
Let's get on with the show. Did you see the shimmy/seizure?
What?
Hillary.
She had another one?
Well, during the debate.
No. Nobody's pointing it out.
Yes, they are.
Oh, they are?
They're calling it, they're calling it, on the left, they're calling it her shimmying. On the right, they're calling it her having a seizure. Here, I'm sending it to you. It was weird. It looked like she couldn't stop it. That's not even the whole thing. But whatever.
So we're supposed to believe that she's so comfortable as a person that she's just shimmying on the stage?
Yes. Fits, right? Everything we know about her.
Good God. Okay, well, I don't know how you want to begin here. I mean, obviously, we need to talk about last night's debate.
Mm-hmm.
You watched it live. I didn't watch it live. I watched social media reaction.
Which is the basically worst thing to do.
Well, it depends on what you're looking for.
Sure.
If you're looking for what happened that night, if you're trying to get the temperature in the room, yes, social media is the last thing you want to go to find that out, because what you basically have is millions of partisans telling you why their person's winning and why the other person sucks.
Correct.
But what I was able to get out of it from a social media perspective, because I've got a trained eye, Tracy, as you know.
Which one, the left or the right?
Wait, haven't decided yet. They're both shimmying. It appears to me from social media reaction that Trump had a strong 30 minutes at the beginning and then started to trail off. And then at that point, Hillary, because she wasn't fading, she had already faded, and there's such a low bar for her. She was consistently low. And from what I've been able to tell from at least the social media side, Trump's performance kept declining as the debate went on until maybe the last 10, 15 minutes. You watched the debate.
Mm-hmm.
What did you see?
Well, I agree with that assessment overall. I just have to add in that it got dreadfully boring in the middle. And I don't know if that's why he kind of faded back or not, but I think that bodes well for him because it speaks to her. Any debate that he's been in previous to this has never gotten what I would call boring. Mm-hmm. And this was just like, oh my God, are we really going here? And it was also a question issue as well, because Of course, we had to waste, I don't even know how much time, 5 minutes maybe, talking about the birth certificate crap yet again.
Yes.
Really? Like, this is what people are dying to hear about when we see these two on stage to fight about this issue that should be long dead, but they can't let it go. And then there was another issue that she wanted to bring up, his tax returns. We got to talk about his tax returns for another 5 or 6 minutes.
Well, and then there was also, I don't know if she brought it up or if it was a question from Lester Holt regarding a lawsuit back in the 70s.
Yes.
So that's what we're doing now. We can go back into the 70s for Donald Trump. We can't discuss Hillary's law career?
No, that's completely off limits. We're not going to talk about the time she defended and successfully got off a child rapist with 2 months in prison and laughed about it. And there's audio of this. No, he says, I've read about this before, and it was right when he came into his father's company. That there was a massive, and he says it was basically a class action lawsuit against a whole bunch of real estate developers and apartment building owners and such like this. That was a civil rights class action suit brought against them. So he pointed that part out, which I've never heard. It's always been presented as this was just Trump and his daddy. They were targeted because they weren't renting to blacks, tenants, et cetera, et cetera. And he says, no, it was a giant lawsuit. There were a bunch of people sued. We settled and we admitted no guilt, because we didn't do anything wrong. So to me, I think that puts it to bed for the vast majority of people. But this is the desperation that the levels that we've reached right now, because I think the black vote is slipping away from her.
Yeah.
And deservedly so. And he did manage to slam in there the super predator line.
I'm sure Lester Holt followed up on that, right?
Oh, of course.
And asked Hillary all about that.
And remember, Lester Holt is a registered Republican.
Oh, yes. And it
It's
showed.
just such an incredible joke. Oh, totally. Totally. But I wanted to go over my first impressions with you, just looks-wise, because that's how shallow I am.
Okay.
And I'm going to provide some anecdotal evidence for you. So Trump looked not in the least bit orange.
Oh, nice.
Which is really good for him. I have a lot of friends that are in the entertainment business, one of whom is a makeup artist, and she's not a Trump fan, but she had posted on Facebook, finally Trump let somebody do his makeup that knows what they're doing, and he looked semi-human tonight. So I'll take that as a win. Uh-huh. And I thought it was interesting. He chose to wear a light blue tie, and he's been known to wear kind of not politically safe colors, if you will. He's worn orange and pinks and stuff like that. So I thought it was interesting he went with blue, which is, the color of Democrats. Somehow that change came about in the 80s, and we've just gone with it.
Yes.
And he had an American flag lapel pin. And she looked great. I have to say that. Her makeup was flawless. Her hair looked wonderful. And she chose to wear a red mouth suit, which is the color of Republicans. And I did not see a flag pin in evidence.
Of course not.
Which is just bizarre, because if you'll remember, Obama got hounded over that.
But it's okay for her. You can't hound her because that would be sexist. But in her defense, for her crowd there on the left, an American flag lapel pin can be triggering.
Of course.
And they posted a sign to warn people, because this was on a college campus. It was at Hofstra University, that things that are said in that room could trigger people. And they actually provided 2 phone numbers for people who got triggered.
Do you have those?
No, I don't. Why, do you want to call them? We can call them right now.
Yeah. Maybe we'll do that later on today.
One of the things that I found fascinating about the whole thing was there were a few times during the debate where Hillary would yell out fact checkers.
Yes.
And anyone else doing that, you would think to yourself, my goodness, this person wants to be president of the United States, and she's yelling for the hall monitor.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot, as president of the United States, be sitting at a table in front of Vladimir Putin, and if Putin says something that you don't agree with or you don't think is factually accurate, you can't just yell, fact checker, in the middle of the meeting, because he'll give you the stink eye. You want to be president, and yet she's going to be able to get away with that. And it maybe that will play in America.
I don't know. I mean, and just she also pointed out, and I'm not sure if you saw this clip, that they had already set up her campaign website to be doing fact checking. So they have this all preloaded and tweetable and shareable and all this stuff. So it's HillaryClinton.com/literally Trump. And I checked it out today, and it was obvious that this was all predetermined because some of them didn't really come up. Mm-hmm. But I thought this might be my favorite, the fact that they have to fact check this. Trump likes to say that Hillary Clinton is the founder of ISIS. She's not. And then parenthetically, neither is Barack Obama. And he did say she's been fighting ISIS her entire adult life, which I believe the AP fact-checked and said, no, actually. I mean, does anybody take that stuff literally?
Talking heads, partisans. But
right. Normal people don't. No. Normal people understand that.
Right. To me, here's the deal. This debate was about one thing and one thing only. Is Donald Trump someone people can trust to be president of the United States? Mm-hmm. We know from 2012 who won the first debate in 2012.
Mitt Romney.
He cleaned Barack Obama's clock.
Yep.
And what happened? Are we talking about President Romney today?
Nope.
So, look, I don't think, from what I've been able to tell, from social media reactions, some of the clips I saw, that this was not Trump's strongest night. But
I think he was a little bit wary about how to handle this, to be overly mean and smack her around like he did with the Republican field during the primary, or to kind of play it nice. And I think he went for playing it nice. He didn't call her a single name last night, and she called him tons of names.
Yeah.
This is a new look for him. But during that first segment, that first 30 minutes, Fingers, I lived vicariously through him. He was just standing up on that stage. I'm not kidding you. How many times have we wanted to confront a politician and just say, look, he said to her, where did I write? I wrote all this stuff down because I was like, this is just friggin' brilliant. You've been here, basically for 30 years. What have you done? Why are you just coming up with solutions now? This is ridiculous. And everybody can understand that.
Right.
Why are we sending her back there again? She's been there forever. And if you have these solutions, why are you just coming up with them now? And she kind of had to backpedal and say, well, I've had them for a long time. Okay, well, then you suck at leading people because you haven't gotten any of them implemented.
There's only so long and so many times you can blame someone else for your failures and have people nod politely and say, yep, I agree. You can only say, and I did see some of this on social media from people who claim to be independents. My gosh, so much of this is the old playbook. I'm going to raise taxes on the wealthy. We're going to provide all this free stuff. My opponent's racist. It's all out of the same Democratic playbook that it's been played for so long. That people are looking for change. And if you go back to the 2008 election, you had a wet behind the ears backbencher of a senator from Illinois going up against a 95-year-old man who had been in Washington forever. All Barack Obama had to do was prove that he could be president of the United States. People wanted change. Next thing you know, Barack Obama's president of the United States.
Uh-huh. And all Trump had to do was prove that he's not a crazy person.
Yes.
And according to Scott Adams, who's been following this and talking about Trump's ability to be massively persuasive, that's all he had to do, and he succeeded at that.
But it's clear that people still are not happy with who they're choosing between them in this election. And you could tell that it wasn't just the talking heads. I talked to people who aren't into politics and that are just, the kind of people that will go every 4 years and vote. And for the few people that I talked to that are like that, it was a hard debate to watch.
Okay.
Because Hillary isn't likable.
Mm-mm.
The media has painted a picture of Donald Trump, and he's helped paint this picture as well, that, at times he's not likable, and his unfavorability numbers, prove that. So you've got two unlikable people who really aren't all that good at debating, standing up there for 90 minutes without a break. And then you've got Lester Holt, who really, from what I've been able to see through reaction and post-debate analysis, didn't do the best job in the world. And at the beginning, I was actually seeing people singing his praises, that he was just letting them go at it.
Yeah, the beginning was great. He just let them fight.
But then when you're asking questions about lawsuits from the 70s and
birth certificates that no one gives a shit about anymore. He allowed her to go into the whole Donald Trump has called women pigs. And I just laugh hysterically at this because I don't think this is effective. I watch reality television. Women call each other pigs all the time. I mean, this is the culture that we live in. Yeah. So, and he said one of the Miss US, whatever his beauty pageant was, one of them got a little chubby. So he called her Miss Piggy. And I'm supposed to be personally offended by this?
Well, I
don't think so.
You saw the ad. What was the ad that you made a great parody of? The mirror ad.
Will be coming out either today or tomorrow. It was all, you have to stop yourself from laughing if you have a sick sense of humor like I do, and you enjoy personal insults. But it's a bunch of young women of all ethnicities and ages and sizes looking at themselves in the mirror. And over top of that, they've got Trump saying something. I think the first line he says is, "Look at that fat face." And this is when I spit my coffee out of my mouth because I was laughing so hard. And it's all, we can't let our daughters grow up with a president like this or something. As if she's a better alternative. As if she's a woman to aspire to be like.
She's a
maniacal, lying
apologist.
Yes. And I don't know if you saw it, but one of the most telling images to me from last night, there's a shot of Bill and Chelsea in the audience. They don't look too thrilled. They're not sitting there elated like, oh, Hillary's kicking butt. They look really, really down.
I'm telling you, and people argue with me about this, I don't think Bill Clinton wants anything to do with being in that house again.
Well, he's been able to do what he's wanted, right? She's been out of the house. She went to 120 countries, fingers. That makes her qualified. Her passport has more stamps than anybody on the planet. And I mean, it's so hard because talk about fact checking. She comes out there and says, the 2008 crisis, do you know what caused that, fingers?
Well, it has to be Bush, right?
No, tax cuts.
Oh, tax cuts.
Yes.
Amazing.
Tax cuts led to the housing market collapse. How these two things are interrelated, I have no clue, and she didn't bother to explain it because she's just counting on the fact that people are so angry about the rich that they'll just believe that. And then she pinged Trump for saying, she's like, he rooted this on, the housing bubble collapse. And she points to something he says in 2006. So to me, I'm like, so he predicted that was coming. And yet you, who were sitting in the Senate, didn't get it, didn't move to do anything about it. Not that I think that there should be government intervention because I think it caused it in the first place. But people understand that Trump's not buying up people's homes.
Right. He's not Elizabeth Warren.
No, of course not. That'll never get discussed. But I mean, it's just mind-numbingly stupid to me. And he did manage to get in there. I thought he was going to say he was going to end the Fed. I'm sitting there being like, say it. Because he said, I just want to point out we're in a bubble again. And it's going to be bad. It's going to be disastrous. And the Fed is completely politicized. And that needs to stop. And if they raise interest rates, he said the only thing that's doing right well is the stock market. And as soon as they raise interest rates, it's all over.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, so he has a better grasp on at least my school of economics, which I believe has more ties to reality than Mrs. Clinton's. And, the tax cuts on the rich cause the housing market collapse. Nothing to do with Franklin Raines over at Freddie or Fannie, wherever he was, that worked for the Clintons. And bundling all those loans, government backing them, pushing them along down the line.
But this isn't just a Trump issue. Again, this is one of the many reasons why the Republicans suck. Is they let Democrats run around and say things like letting the American people keep more of their money that they earn is bad for the country and could actually, in this case, cause a housing collapse.
Yes. It has nothing to do with Fed policy or policies coming out of Washington. Nothing created the circumstances for that aside from letting rich people keep more of their own money. Somehow that ended up with people that couldn't afford to pay their mortgages getting mortgages in the first place.
Right. You had people making $15 an hour getting $300,000 mortgages. Tell me how that has anything to do with tax policy.
And actually, if you look at it, the prime market soured first. And this is something that I learned in Tom Woods' book, Meltdown. He said, if you want to actually look at this, because he comes out of the Austrian School of Economics that always looks at Fed policy and money supply and stuff like this and interest rates and how that affects everything. So their stance on all of this is because the Fed kept interest rates low, what are rich people going to do? Are they going to put their money in the bank and earn basically 0% interest on it? Or are they going to invest in something?
Exactly.
So they started investing in real estate too and flipping it like crazy. And then that market dried up first. So it wasn't just, all this is on the way to the poor, who through government policies and pressures, we forced banks to give loans to. And then we backed them. They were packaged and sold by Fannie and Freddie with the full weight and credit of the United States government behind every single one of those loans. So they were loans that could not fail. They got AAA ratings from the bond rating agencies. Give me a break. You're going to tell me this is because Donald Trump hasn't paid taxes, which he's now saying flat out? This is why you're not releasing your tax returns. Either it's because you don't make as much money as you say you do, or you don't pay any taxes.
Let's go back. Let's go back briefly to the housing crisis. I remember I moved from Michigan to Indiana in 2000. And I didn't know much about Indianapolis, so I didn't go buy a home right away. I rented an apartment. And down here in Indianapolis, the housing market, of like many parts of the country, it was exploding. New construction was everywhere. And they have these developments where you walk into a model home. They've got like 10 or 11 models to choose from. You pick one, you kind of put your own personal touch on it. They build it for you. In 3 or 4 months, you've got your own home. You would come home to your apartment, and 5 out of 7 days in a week, you would have a flyer from some builder saying, why rent this apartment when you can own a 1,500 square foot home for $550 a month? Like, holy shit. Wow, really? Right. So a bunch of people who had no business buying homes ran out and built. They built a home. I had a neighbor who lived across the street from me. I don't know, since the whole housing collapse, if this kind of loan still exists. I believe it was called a Nehemiah Loan. They borrowed 103% of the home's value.
And they encourage everybody to do that, right? To borrow over 100%.
Yes. They didn't have the 3% down for a typical FHA loan, so they borrowed the down payment and tacked that on to the loan.
What could go wrong?
My parents were stunned that people could. I only put 3% down on my house, and they were surprised.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk to the old school people, it was like 20%, 10%.
Easily, at least
3.
You want to get it so that your mortgage payment is just 1 week's paycheck.
Right.
This is what my parents taught me. Nobody taught me this in school, mind you.
Of course not. You should be learning things that are actually important in your life in school.
Correct. Life skills. Like budgeting and how to get a mortgage.
Let's spend 2 weeks on Harvey Milk. Wow. Thanks for that.
Home Ec will teach you how to cook brownie mix out of a Betty Crocker box. I'm not kidding you. All I learned in home ec was how to cook like prepackaged food and how to sew a little bit. Nothing about the ec part. We weren't given like, here's a budget, here's what you'll earn. This is what a paycheck looks like. Notice all the stuff that goes out to government programs. Mm-hmm. And that's why, honestly, when I had my first serious job and I got my first paycheck and saw all that, I knew it was coming because I'd worked since I was a teenager. But I couldn't believe how many people in the department that I was working in never looked at that page of their paycheck. They just looked at the check.
Oh, come on. Fact check.
Sorry, you'll have to go to tracyconnors.com/literally Tracy to find out that I'm correct. But yeah, I was like, do you guys ever look at this page of your paycheck where it shows you what's coming out for Social Security and FICA and federal income taxes and all that stuff? No. Okay. I'll just be the only one sitting here seething over this kind of stuff. But yeah, so she's out demonizing, trickle down economics is back, fingers.
Oh, what's she called? Trumped up trickle down?
Trumped up trickle down. And I can't remember what the dollar value is placed on this, but Thomas Sowell issued a challenge maybe a decade ago to anyone that can find where this term originated and it being used in a positive way to explain this economic policy of cutting taxes. And I believe it still stands. It's like Breitbart's, here's $100,000 for video proof that all these guys were spat upon and called names and such. So this is a boogeyman that they've dreamed up, but it's locked in everybody's heads. And yet they cannot make the jump from that to saying, wait a minute, isn't she just calling for the same thing, but she wants it to trickle down from Washington instead?
Right.
And she's calling for stimulus 2.0. Like, just flat out right in front of your face. We're going to do infrastructure projects and green energy. And he did slam her a little bit. I don't think he could recall Solyndra. But she's like, we're going to deploy. So she's using military language, which I thought was interesting. And this is very FDR-ish. To move everybody into like a wartime, peacetime economy kind of deal where they wanted everybody regimented. So we're going to deploy 500 million solar panels. And I wish he would have said, yeah, those can decorate my wall. But he said, we've already invested in a solar company and it went bust and it cost us a lot of money. And so, to me, it's like I wish he would just ding her over and over and over again and say the people that run our government have proven, and he did say this, that she's been there. Yeah, she has experience and it's all bad. It's all bad, which is correct. But all these people that have been there, they don't know anything. They can't know anything about what consumers actually want, what's going to be the future of XYZ technology. They can't. So they're misallocating resources. And the problem comes from what I believe it was first Bastiat that called this the problem of the seen and the unseen. Mm. And these are consequences of stuff like this from economic actions. So you immediately see something like a bridge. And that's a tangible thing. But you don't see all the things that could have possibly been done with that money if it hadn't been diverted into this bridge.
Right.
Then we'll slap a politician's name on it, and everybody associates this with wonderfulness. You can see people working. Like Hazlitt expanded on this in his excellent book, Economics in One Lesson, expanded on this whole idea. And just like there's something that they can point to, and everybody sees it going on. So they're like, oh, okay, this works. But it doesn't, because we have no idea what would have come into being, and we'll never know. So there's nothing ever to point to from our side that's like, stop this nonsense. You can't take $2.5 trillion plus some debt every year from the American people and just spit it out in all kinds of different directions and expect the economy to grow in the way that it should if it was left up to people to decide what they want to purchase.
And again, another reason why Republicans suck. Mm-hmm. You brought up trickle down from Washington. One Republican politician, and I can't remember who it was, tried to start using trickle down government, mm-hmm. which to me is easily understandable. But because that shit was thrown against the wall and it didn't stick in the first week or two, they just abandon it.
Right.
And the left doesn't do that. It's
nope.
Day after day, week after week, month after month. I wouldn't be surprised if trumped up trickle down catches on, because even though it's a really shitty line, mm-hmm. the left will grab onto that and use it day after day.
Without a doubt.
Until the election, because that's what they do. And yet it just seems like on the right, you've got a bunch of people that will just throw ideas at the wall, hoping something sticks. And if it doesn't stick, then they just move on, shrug their shoulders, and say, well, we tried. We tried. It didn't work. Well, okay. Well, that's not how the left operates.
No.
Bush lied. People died. Didn't catch on the first day it was said.
But it's still with us.
Yes.
It's still with us. And we're still fighting about whether or not Trump opposed the Iraq war. This also took up some time. And there was a call for fact checkers to please come in and agitate on the secretary's behalf. Yeah. This is such a stupid issue. Who cares? Did he get a vote on the Senate floor like she did? No. Okay, done deal. Let's move along, please.
Well, I do think it's an issue that he said that he didn't support it back then. He did. That's fine. Let's talk about it for 2 minutes, and then let's talk about the woman who actually voted for the war.
Yeah.
And then when it became politically inconvenient to support the war, she flip-flopped because the left's base was going apeshit over the fact that we were in Iraq and then ran away from her vote. What's worse?
Right. I mean, and he kept saying that this points to her bad decision-making. It's true.
It is true.
But in that regard, I want to give a shout-out to myself for my Snap poll on Twitter last night.
Yes.
Which, depending on when this comes out, you might be able to still vote in it. So you can find me at Tracy L. Connors on Twitter. So I said, Snap poll. Whose actions have resulted in the death of more Muslims? Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton? Now, in the reality that you and I inhabit, Fingers, Donald Trump is responsible for how many Muslim deaths?
0.
Correct. Hillary Clinton, I don't even know if you could put a figure on it.
I don't know how you can. But...
Right. I'm upwards of 100,000, I would think. So, right now, I've got 1,195 votes, and Donald Trump is at 33%. Hillary Clinton is at 67%. So we really exist in two parallel but alternate realities.
Internet polling. It's priceless. I went on the Drudge Report really late last night when I got home. And, of course, they've got 2 polls up there right now. And Trump is, winning them all as far as who won the debate.
Oh, crushing it.
And, I mean, look, I don't think any of this matters. First of all, let's face it. The whole thing was overhyped. I mean, I was looking forward to it, and I didn't even end up seeing it live. But I was looking forward to seeing it. But they were making this out. This is the event of the century. And then once something like that starts where it's hyped day after day, that this is going to be the best debate you've ever got. It's fireworks. And then, like you said, midway through, you're reaching for your cold brewed coffee.
Yeah.
It didn't live up to the hype. So that's bad. But on top of it, like I said earlier, I just don't think that it matters. For Trump, it could have been a knockout blow if he would have destroyed her. I do believe that. But I don't think that what you had last night was you had 2 candidates. One Democrat who was even or slightly behind in the polls, trying to reassure people that she's a likable human being who will not collapse 30 seconds into a public event. And you have a Republican who people aren't sure is up to the job, up there trying to convince people that he has enough on the ball to be president of the United States. I don't think it really matters who wins or loses. They both had different objectives that night. And I think, at least on Trump's part, he showed enough to where people who are desperate for a change are probably just going to shrug their shoulders and say, you know what? I think he can do the job.
Right. I think hammering home the idea that she's been at this for 30 years, everything sucks, and she's made really bad decisions in that time is the message to keep hammering. Yeah. Everybody can understand that. It's like, going between attacking her on the email stuff, which is complicated. There's all kinds of tech language involved with servers and PTSD files and XYZ. But health, everybody gets that. So this is the same kind of deal. She's been in there. She's part of the system, which I think he should hang around her neck. If we talk about systemic problems, this woman is the system.
Yeah.
30 years she's been a creature of Washington, D.C., and she's got all these wonderful ideas. Why wasn't anybody listening to her, number one? So she sucks at leadership. And maybe her ideas are crappy, number two, because they sound just like what we've been doing.
Yeah. More of this. It's all more of the same versus.
And it's just, it's so stunning that she trots out experts, and I don't know if everyday people are interested anymore in what experts have to say. So she kept talking about, the experts, a lot of independent experts have looked at my tax plan versus his, and they say his will add $5 trillion to the debt, and mine is debt neutral and all this stuff, and I'm going to pay for it by taxing the rich. Like, really? How effective has that been during the Obama time?
But people still buy into that shit. I mean, I know she went on in the first couple of minutes about all the free shit she's going to give people, and look, millennials really buy into that stuff. I'm seeing things on Facebook last night from millennial friends, and about the student loan debt that they have, and other countries get into free childcare, and it's just like, oh my gosh, this is the kind of stuff where older people look at it and go, at some point, are we going to hear how this is going to be paid for? And if you think that you're going to be provided free health care, free college education, and Bill Gates is going to pay for it all.
Bill Gates runs out of money in 2 or 3 days worth of government spending. There's that excellent video. I think it was Iowa Hawk Blog that put together the data for it, and then Bill Whittle made it a couple years ago. It's called Eat the Rich, where he shows if you confiscated all the money of the wealthiest Americans, it would fund the government through April or June.
Yeah.
And that's just 1 year. Next year, they're completely broke.
Right.
And these people have no concept of it.
No.
And when you start getting into numbers like trillions, it's just totally a lost cause. I mean, think about when the lottery got up to $500 million. We were cracking up. I mean, that's a day of government spending.
Yeah.
They win that lottery every day, and it's your money, and you're fools if you don't recognize that. But they've managed to run this scam for a long time. But Trump hammered it home. He's like, we have $20 trillion in debt. You can't pay for this crap anymore. And this idea that cutting taxes on the rich, which we've shown over time, tax receipts, the amount of money as a percentage of GDP that comes into Washington, stays about the same.
Right.
Regardless of where the tax rates are. It's about between 18 and 20%.
Right.
So this is irrelevant, and I don't care who her economists are that are scoring this. They're a bunch of liars. And their models are incorrect.
But it's tofu for her crowd. And that's what it's all about. But she's not winning anybody. That's the thing. I don't know who swayed people that are on the fence. But that's the way it is with both of these candidates after last night? Was a lot of it was preaching to their own choir, but as far as reaching out to independents, do you think that many people were swayed either way last night?
It's hard to tell, and I do think that they were both playing for independence. As subtle as that color thing is, I do think that that's a subliminal messaging. So she's playing to the Never Trump red team, and he's playing to the moderate to middle-of-the-road Democrats with the blue.
Okay.
Don't tell me that they don't have image consultants that tell them to do this crap.
Of course, I understand that, but I mean,
but the problem for independents with Trump was that he's been painted as unstable and erratic, and the temperament thing. And I don't know if you caught the exchange about temperament, where she kind of attacked him, and he's like, "I've got great temperament." He had a great, I can't remember how he said it, like the best, of course, the greatest temperament the world has ever known. And then he threw something out there about she was at an AFL-CIO thing, and backstage, apparently, she had a little temperament issue. He kind of slid that in there.
Fact check.
Yep, fact check that place. But he threw, Trumpka's name in. I'm like, I wonder if Trumpka's talking trash on her.
I saw the other day that the United Auto Workers came out for her.
Which is insane.
It is insane because here you have a strong feminist that the first thing that comes out of her mouth was, my husband was a good president. her husband signed NAFTA, trotted Al Gore all over the country out to sell NAFTA, even to go on, if I remember correctly, against Ross Perot on Larry King Live. And I believe they debated NAFTA, if my memory's not failing me. But it was back in the 90s, Tracy. A hard time remembering what happened last week. But here you have Hillary Clinton acting as though she is now against NAFTA, against TPP when she was for it. We wouldn't even be talking about trade issues right now if Donald Trump hadn't brought it up.
No, correct. And he nailed her on that. He said, you said it was the gold standard of trade. And she's like, no, fact check. Yeah, fact check. He's right. You're wrong. You're a liar. And I think I think that was one of the pieces from her book, Hard Choices, that they removed from the second edition, was her support of that trade bill. And honestly, how devastating has NAFTA been to the auto industry?
You look at towns like Saginaw, Michigan, like Anderson, Indiana. And some of these, of course, are self-inflicted wounds by companies like General Motors and Chrysler. But Ross Perot was right. There was a giant sucking sound of jobs that went to Mexico. And you're seeing now that Ford is moving all of its small car production down to Mexico. Now, you start talking about issues like this, and what is really amazing to me is you'll have people on the right going, oh my God, that person's against free trade. Totally against free trade. Well, no. No, not against free trade. And I'm sure we can get a think tank in here that will tell us that, we had a net gain of jobs based on, NAFTA. And that may play well to the people who live in townhomes in Alexandria, Virginia. But for people in the Rust Belt that have seen jobs leave, towns completely destroyed, the message of, you know what, can we at least re-examine these trade agreements is going to play. And, I've used this example before. Say you and I, Tracy, enter into a contractual agreement.
Okay.
And pick whatever product you want, whatever. We'll just say it's a contractual agreement, and you're not living up to the contract. If I want to get out of that contract, that doesn't mean I'm not a capitalist anymore.
What?
Oh my God, that person's anti-capitalist because he wants to get out of that contract. Well, no, actually, I made an agreement with somebody, and A, it's not working out the way I thought it was going to, or B, like in case of people like, nations like China, they are completely screwing us over. Can we re-examine our relationship? Can we do that? That doesn't mean someone is anti-free trade. Maybe they're just getting screwed over.
Yeah. And we've said this before. A trade deal, a free trade agreement is just, I won't tax your stuff, you don't tax mine.
Right.
It's a page.
Honestly, now you're just being too simplistic, Tracy.
Well, and I had never heard, and Trump brought this up, I didn't know that Mexico has a VAT tax.
I didn't know that.
Did you know this? He said they have a 16% VAT tax.
No, that's news to me.
Right. So their stuff comes in here, duty-free, tax-free, whatever. And our stuff goes in there, and it's subject to their 16% tax.
That's a problem.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to read this to you because I want to show that, because I've had fights with libertarians about this issue, and I'm just like, okay, let's go to my gold standard libertarian economist, Murray Rothbard. So he written this piece. It's called the NAFTA Myth. You can find it on Mises.org, talking specifically about NAFTA. So he says, among the champions of free trade, the label North American Free Trade Agreement is supposed to command unquestioning assent. But how can you be against free trade? Well, it's very easy. The folks who have brought us NAFTA and presume to call it free trade are the same people who call government spending investment, taxes contributions, and raising taxes deficit reduction. Let us not forget that the communists too used to call their system freedom. So he says, in this place, genuine free trade doesn't require a treaty or its deformed cousin, a trade agreement. NAFTA is called a trade agreement so it can avoid the constitutional requirement of approval by 2/3 of the Senate. If the establishment truly wants free trade, all it has to do is to repeal our numerous tariffs, import quotas, anti-dumping laws, and all other American-imposed restrictions on trade. No foreign policy or foreign maneuvering is needed. Huh, that's weird. Right? Makes total sense to me. I think most people can understand that.
Yes.
And the thing missing from your little metaphor, which was perfect, though, is that you weren't the one that entered into the agreement with me, if we're going to compare this to what's going on. This would be as if somebody prior to you entered into agreement that you were then forced to agree to with me.
Yep.
With no room to renegotiate, even though you're like, well, this kind of sucks.
We can't renegotiate, Tracy.
Nope. It would be like buying a house out of foreclosure and then being stuck with the original mortgage payments and the original interest rate. You wouldn't do that.
No.
I know.
It's almost over.
40 some more days of this, but we got 2 more presidential debates and a vice presidential debate.
Are you interested at all in seeing the vice presidential debate?
Oh, sure. I want to see Mike Pence kill Pumpkinhead. I think he'll do a better job. I mean, they were both governors, right? Let's see whose state's record backs it up better, their performances. And I think that Pence, I don't know, he's your governor. What's your take on living under his reign?
Well, look, I am not a fanboy of Mike Pence.
No, you mean you don't live and die for politicians?
Well, there's that too.
Yeah.
I mean, we can bring this up a little bit later, the reaction over Ted Cruz endorsing Donald Trump. But going back to Pence, there are some things that have gone on here in Indiana I'm not happy with. I thought Mitch Daniels, who was the governor before Mike Pence, was an excellent governor. Pence, the Religious Freedom Act, and where he really misstepped on that. And then, of course, my running beef with the Republican Party here in Indiana regarding Sunday sales of liquor. I can't buy a 6-pack of beer on a Sunday at a grocery store in Indiana. And I know people think, well, what's the big deal? What kind of, are you that much of a drunk that you can't go one day with it? That's not the point. The point is, if you lived in Indiana, you would know that people who claim to be the champions of the free market economics did everything they could to make sure that Sunday sales would not pass. And if it did pass, it would put these huge burdens on grocery stores and box retailers. Tracy, if you are a Walmart in Indiana, the last Sunday sales bill that passed, you would have to have a separate part of your Walmart walled off specifically for liquor and beer, and have a store clerk there specifically for your little liquor store. Now, mind you, right now, as the law is here in Indiana, there already is just an aisle of liquor and beer, but it's warm and I can't buy it on a Sunday. But apparently, if we sell it on Sunday, we're protecting the children, Tracy.
Sure.
By walling it off. Making stores spend thousands of dollars remodeling their stores, hiring people just so they can sell beer and liquor on Sunday. And this is the Republican Party that's like, yeah, that's what should happen.
Sure. And that's what we mean by regulations, kids.
Yeah.
Onerous regulations, which Trump said he's going to cut like crazy, and laid that at Hillary's feet and said, you just want more and more and more regulations. And I think it's become such an amorphous term that when people on the left hear it, they run it through their little filter, and it's basically like, okay, you don't want helmet laws, you don't want anybody wearing seatbelts, we shouldn't have fire retardant clothing for children. Like, this is where they go with that. Yeah. As opposed to like, no, we don't want you to have to build a wall around the liquor in the store to keep it away from the eyes of children who can't buy it anyway.
And who can see it right now.
Right, or aren't seeing billboards every 10 feet for it, or advertisements on television. Give me a break. This is not protecting anybody. You're just saddling small businesses with expenses they don't need.
So I'm not a big fan of Mike Pence, but I'm sure he will do a fine job versus Tim Kaine And what's missing from Trump, obviously, that Pence has is Pence is an experienced debater. He's been in this for a while. And there were openings last night that Trump could have taken advantage of, but he was on the defensive too much in a lot of instances. And the idea that cybersecurity could come up.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about an accidental softball thrown at Trump, and he didn't take advantage of it, where people were absolutely screaming through the internet, "Oh my gosh, how are you not nailing her on her emails again?"
Sure. But he did have a great line of, it could have been a 400-pound hacker laying in their bed or something like this. I love it. I think it's great. But he did get to talk about the new, oh my God, are you going to blow up the world, sir? No. He's like, I'm not into nuclear first strike, but you can't take it off the table because duh. And secondly, if somebody blows up a nuke, that's the end of everything. So, this is a stupid discussion. And it's like, why didn't Obama get rid of all these nukes? Has he taken the nuclear option off the table? No, but we want to make him look erratic and crazy, even though, despite what 30-some% of the people that took the poll on my page think, Hillary's killed way more people than Trump. Not directly, of course, but indirectly.
Well, and this is where I would have liked to have seen Trump channel his inner Newt Gingrich. At some point later in the debate, when the Clinton Foundation hadn't come up, there were no questions about Syria, no questions about Libya.
Or Benghazi.
Yeah, it would have been nice if Trump at some point would have said, after another one of these birther questions, that, Lester, at some point, can we move on to something other than my income, my taxes, my father, a 40-year-old lawsuit, remarks I made as a reality TV star, and can we start talking about issues that are important to the American people? Can we talk about my opponent's track record? Can we go back 50 years, or not 50 years, but 40 years? Talk about some of the things that she did in the 70s?
Yeah.
Can we do that? I mean, at some point, I would
getting fired from the Watergate Commission.
Yeah,
because she was encouraging them to break the law.
Right. Oh, we can't talk.
Failing the bar.
That's old
Failing
news,
the bar.
Tracy.
Yeah. I'm told that she's more educated than he is. And I'm like, okay, an MBA versus a JD. All right, that's a toss-up to me. But she failed the bar exam.
Yeah. But in her defense, there's no shame in failing the bar exam. It happens.
No, it happens. I'm sure it was a sexist exam.
Well, she had no fact checker.
Oh, true. Make sure to check out HillaryClinton.com/literally Trump. Like, how BuzzFeedish Vox-splaining is that?
Yeah.
Literally Trump. But I did find that quote of his that I love so much. He said to her, and this is in the very beginning of the debate when I was just like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I wanted to jump into his body for a second and just be the one that got to say this. He said, "You've been doing this for 30 years. Why are you just thinking of these solutions now?" I thought that was a direct hit, and then he did trot it out, and I want to make this clear, everybody. He doesn't say Big Lee. He's not saying B-I-G-L-Y. He's saying Big League, like Big League Chew. Right. So he said something about, I'm going to cut taxes, Big League, and you're going to raise taxes, Big League, end of story.
Yeah.
Like, there you go. There's your Vine ad for the day tomorrow.
But just on the rich.
Of course, they're not paying their fair share. And it's horrible that he wants to cut business taxes down to 15%. That's a boon to him and his buddies. And everybody else that pays business taxes. Why do you think these companies, one of the reasons that companies are leaving is because of business taxes. Then she's also demanding that I don't know how she's going to accomplish this. It obviously needs to be done legally, but she wants there to be profit sharing.
What?
Yes. Oh, that was in her opening statement. She thinks the companies should share in the profits with their workers. It's like, holy marks. My God. And it's just like, wait a minute. Part where do their salaries come from? To begin with, that comes out of the revenue.
And many of these companies are now paying through the nose to provide some form of health care to their employees, thanks to people like Hillary Clinton.
Yes, that wasn't mentioned at all. There was no mention of that, what we're going to do about this. I mean, it was off the rails with as far as things that are really concerning to people. Like, there was no talk about immigration. There was no talk about Obamacare. None of that stuff. And she said in the very beginning something basically like we are almost out of the recession. Basically, I'm just summarizing. We're almost out. And what he wants to do is take us back to the policies that got us there, which is the whole tax cut lie line that she has. Almost out? It's been 8 years, lady. So you're basically just threw Obama under the bus. And he did try to nail her on that. He said that she was very rude to Obama during the 2008. It was awesome. That was at the end when he kind of came back to life. But then when she was trying to run away from her support of TPP, calling it the gold standard and all of this, and then she was like copped out by being like, well, I wasn't around when it was signed. And after I'd seen it, then I realized, oh, this is no good anymore. So he's like, so you're saying this is President Obama's fault? You're saying that President Obama made the bad decision? Let's get this, like trying to push her on that to make it, appear that there's some distance, that she's trash talking him. And he also went after her about the way the DNC conducted their primary and screwed Bernie. So he did make a play for the disaffected Bernie people. And I thought that was pretty wise. But I don't know. I mean, to me, it's like, I thought he did great. And then seeing other people's reactions, of course, clouds my judgment. And I'm like, okay, at worst it was a tie, and a tie goes to him.
Well, and listen, there's a hive mind.
Sure.
On social media. As soon as a couple of the quote-unquote thought leaders start putting their opinion out there, and then everybody's...
And the thought leeches come around.
Yes. Oh, I like that. Thought leeches.
No, the thought... What did I say to you? It was the thought leaders and the thought repeaters.
Yes.
Yes. So I try not to be a thought repeater. My initial take was he got in some really, really good digs on her. I think average people that don't live and die by this stuff, that politics isn't their favorite sport, look at him and are going after her and think, yeah, I love this. Like, I've been sitting at home yelling at the politicians on my television who've been lying to me for decades. The economy still sucks. I go outside. I have eyeballs. I interact with other people. It's pretty obvious that things aren't that good. So, yeah, I can get behind him. He seems stable. He seems reasonable. He seems as angry as is necessary to the situation. And he gave it to her. And I don't know how you come back from that line. Like, you've been there for 30 years. Why are you just coming up with this stuff now?
Right.
But it's the people that put their faith in politicians as saviors that are the real problem to me.
And that's when we need to switch gears from the debate and talk about the massive meltdown that happened Friday when Ted Cruz, for reasons I really am trying to understand, and the only thing I can come up with is that, the big money people said, Ted, you need to endorse Donald Trump or the checks are going to stop coming.
There's also the threat, too, of a challenge to him in 2018. They've been making noises that Perry might step in there and run for his seat in the Senate in 2018, and he'd be backed by Trump. And they'd already done polling that showed that Rick Perry potentially could unseat him, or at least beat him in the primary.
So Ted Cruz came out for Trump on Friday, and the people, many of whom are living in the Never Trump tent, damn near burned the tent down during the meltdown that Cruz ended up stabbing them in the back. You saw a lot of Ted Cruz is exactly who we thought he was. He's a politician, but many people acted like he was more than just a politician. Mm-hmm. And to say that they were heartbroken after this announcement is an understatement.
Yeah.
Glenn Beck had Ted Cruz on Monday on his show, and it reminded me of when my freshman year in high school girlfriend broke up with me. The amount of ache that was going through Glenn Beck was, if you watch it on the Blaze, you see the clip, you could tell the man doesn't know what to believe in anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently, and this went with the rest of the cast over there at the Glenn Beck show, that was just a small sample of a larger Ted Cruz movement that cannot believe what they saw on Friday. And I, for one, am incredibly amused by it.
He's just not George Washington. I mean, that was the sentence. And I'm kind of butchering it. I'm sure it was a little bit different, but that's the gist that Beck came away. Ted Cruz is not George Washington. Yeah, right. No shit. We all knew that. Are you going to get back? What did he give him? He gave him George Washington's compass. Because as you pointed out numerous times, Glenn Beck is the carrot top of political commentators. He does a whole props routine.
Props now.
And he's amassed an incredible collection of stuff. And you got to wonder why they're having money trouble over there. Perhaps it's because he's spent a fortune collecting things, antiques and things like this, which he travels around with on a private plane. Totally safe. Yeah, so he gave Ted Cruz George Washington's compass. So I wonder if he's going to ask for that back. He didn't do that during the interview, and I thought he actually went pretty easy on him during that.
Yes.
And he was just so emotionally distraught that he couldn't get angry. He was just, his soul was crushed. And we've both met Beck. He was perfectly nice to me. I know that he was perfectly nice to you. So Absolutely. This isn't anything about his character per se. He's just nuts. And he's looking for a savior. And that's the wrong move. How old is he? Close to 60? If you haven't figured that out by now, you're done, dude.
I think he's early 50s, but still, yes, you're right.
I don't think, yeah. I figured that kind of like hero worshiping stuff out when I was 5 or 6.
I think he's like 53, but.
And it's a hard lesson, but my God, nobody's perfect. If he could time travel and meet George Washington, I think he'd be like, wow, you're not George Washington. You're not this perfect, angelic human being.
It's really hard for me to criticize Glenn Beck because people who are familiar with what I've done in the past few years and when I was with FTR Radio, there have been times when the Blaze was really good to us. We used to have Jason Howerton on every week. There were a few occasions where I was flown in to do stuff at the Blaze. There was a school choice event where they had in movie theaters across the country that Glenn Beck hosted in his studio, and there were like only 4 bloggers that were allowed to be in there to report on it, and I was asked to do it, and I was very happy to be there. But yeah, you gotta. I'm not gonna question his. Well, I don't know if I don't. I'm not gonna question his sanity, but at the very least, you got to start questioning judgment to think that some politician's going to be your savior. I mean, even the hero worship that exists with Ronald Reagan, I think, is out of control. I mean, yeah. I used to remember in the 80s watching the Democratic National Convention. Mm-hmm. And they would trot out someone like Gary Hart. And the media would sit there in breathless anticipation, speculating, has the Democratic Party found their new JFK? And as a kid, I'm sitting thinking to myself, Jesus Christ, this is the 80s and they're talking about finding their JFK? Move on, for crying out loud. And that was, we're talking 80s versus 60s. Now we're 2016 and we're still bringing up Ronald Reagan, talking about a party that has pretty much abandoned much of what Ronald Reagan stood for. Right. It's pathetic. So the hero worship of a politician, you're going to get disappointed 99.9% of the time, because at the end of the day, a politician is what? A politician, and most of them lie. Most of them will misrepresent what they really believe if they think that it will keep them in office. And that's basically what Ted Cruz said to Glenn Beck in that interview was like, okay, look, what I said in Cleveland, I meant it, but here's the spin. And everybody's kind of looking around going, okay.
Right. I patterned it after, what do you say, Reagan's speech at the 76 convention,
Yes.
For Ford and Kennedy's speech.
Yeah,
and
Kennedy
both of those
Carter.
speeches were received as being endorsement speeches. And I love that Beck was like, I never officially endorsed you, sir. Like, I'll have you. Okay, dude.
Oh.
But you dropped everything, spent, what was it, like $2 million or something like that, running around the country agitating for him. You gave him the thing. You prayed. You fasted.
I sat in a cold warehouse in Iowa City, Iowa, at a Ted Cruz event for an hour and a half, an event where Glenn Beck spoke for at least 50 minutes.
Oh.
And I never saw Ted Cruz because Glenn Beck spoke for so long that the person I was with said, I have to go now. And he's going to backtrack. Well, I never endorsed you, sir. You flew out to Iowa.
He went everywhere. Don't you remember the video from the Nevada caucuses where he looks like he was on his way to Pan for Gold in 1848? Wearing that ridiculous hat that it looks like he stole it from Pharrell. And he was in the lobby trying to do whatever they do at those caucuses where you just get to like shout out about the candidate and nobody was paying him any attention.
And then Trump peed on his shoe.
Right.
Trump walked in and everybody ran away from him.
But I love it. I mean, he's playing politician to Ted Cruz's politician by saying, I never officially endorsed you. Okay. Well, I never officially said I wasn't going to vote for Trump. Like, we can play this game all day long. But then he came back later. I guess it was a later segment, and you had sent me the transcript, and I didn't listen to the actual thing. I just perused the transcript, and he had that whole, well, maybe I should have gone with Rubio. You haven't learned anything. I picked the wrong savior. It should have been, the other Cuban guy. That's the ticket. Next time I'll learn. No, you haven't learned anything, sir. And now you've brought your whole empire down around you.
But, let's face it, there are people that are doing the same thing with Trump.
Sure.
I mean, sometimes I worry about Ann Coulter.
I think she'll be okay. I think she enjoys this stuff the way that I do, where it's just like, oh, this is fun to watch somebody just smash mouth the media and kind of give it to Hillary. And I wish he would have given it to her a little bit harder. I understand that most women don't react the way that I do to that kind of thing. Like seeing a man beat up on a little old lady is not going to win over their votes.
I never want to hear the sentence, give it to Hillary harder again. The rest of my life.
Sorry, that's probably the only time those words have ever been strung together in the English language. But I do think that he kind of left it to just go back to the debate for a second. He did leave this looming threat in the air when she went on the rant, brought up the crap that he said about Rosie O'Donnell again, which he had to bring her name into it. Because, I said those things about Rosie. She attacked me, and I think everybody agrees with me that I was right and all this. But he composed himself and said, I could have said some really nasty things that would have hurt you and your family. And I'm not going to go there. I'm not. But leaving it out there, like, you do this again to me, lady, and it's on.
Well, going on the Drudge Report this morning, Lester Holt apparently asked 6 follow-up questions to Trump. Did not ask any follow-ups to Hillary.
No, it was still weighted in her favor, of course. And one of the things that speaks to me about their reaction, the Clinton camp's reaction, is Town Hall had a piece that came out last night by Justin Holcomb. The headline is Clinton runs from reporters after debate. Trump speaks with CNN and Fox. So either it was a nap time or whatever they had her on to get her that speedy was wearing off, and she had to get back to what I assume is a propofol-induced nap in some kind of a hyperbolic chamber of sorts. But I don't know. It's hard to say. I do want to know who told her to smile more, because unless that person is a woman, they're clearly sexist and need to be called out for it. Because that's the most I've ever seen her smile. And she managed not to yell.
Well,
unlike
Michael,
in that, what was that to the United Auto Workers? That weird
no, it was
address?
in Nevada. It was at some. It was taped for some union event in Nevada. Why am I not up by 50 points, you may ask?
Why?
Well, you do have people out there. Michael Moore tweeted last night. Pro-Hillary gloaters doing end zone dance again when still on 50-yard line. You must get it in your head, and this is in all caps, Trump is gonna win, and act accordingly, exclamation point.
I do think that there were some issues last night. He was sniffling a little bit, which was kind of weird in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if he's yanked it or not. Oh, good. I went to Howard Dean's Twitter, and I see he retweeted our favorite Michelle Fields, who's still fighting the good fight against Trump.
That's good.
Yeah, of course. But Howard Dean tweeted something like, is he on... notice Trump sniffling all the time? Coke user? Seriously? This is unbelievable. If they want to go there, I mean, how many videos of her where she's drunk, or photographs of her looking kind of inebriated? And that video we were just talking about, the clip with, why am I not? Scott Adams took a look at that, and he presented it to his audience. He does, I don't know if you follow him on Twitter or not, but he does a thing every day where he'll go on Periscope in the morning, and it's Coffee with Scott Adams, and he'll kind of break down what he sees in the race as far as the persuasion tactics, where it's moving. And he analyzed that video of her, and he said, what do you guys think is going on? And let people weigh in and say, it looks like she's maybe on drugs or this or that. And he's like, what if, it's her Parkinson's, whatever, all these theories. And he said, what if I just said to you, does she look drunk? Do you think that could be it? He's like, think about how drunk people sound. They can't control their volume levels. They're easily irritable. So just look at it through the prism of that, through the bottom of a beer glass, and tell me, do you think she was drunk?
Beer.
And now it's all I could think about. I know beer. She's a liquor.
She's a gin and tonic woman, if there ever was one.
Gin Rickeys. Something that... Maybe she would go with the mint juleps or something like this, because... I was re-listening to the audio of her from that rape trial where she defended the man who had raped a 12-year-old girl. And she has a really kind of thick Southern accent in that, which is fascinating because we all know she's from Illinois, which I believe is a state she still hasn't visited.
Oh?
Yeah, odd, huh?
Well, when you have it in the bag. There was news, and I don't know if this will change things at all. But you heard some breaking news yesterday that the Clinton campaign may be pulling out of Ohio.
Yes. Yeah, they had come out and said no more. She's not going to campaign there anymore. They're throwing in the towel. And then it's being reported. Well, everybody knows that in order for Republicans to win, they need Ohio. I love how that changes. We're told, as far as I've been paying attention to this, whoever wins Ohio wins. That's always been the story. Now it's suddenly shifted to Republicans need that state to win.
Okay.
It's stunning. And he's closing the gap in Pennsylvania.
Just to make people's heads explode, I have to read this. This is from Real Clear Politics. Apparently, Ted Cruz was on the Hugh Hewitt show. Giving his assessment of Donald Trump's performance.
Okay.
Quote, I thought Donald had the strongest debate performance he's had in this election cycle. I think he really went after Hillary, which was a good thing, and I think he drew strong contrast, particularly in taxes and on regulation and on law and order, and on the disastrous Iran deal. And so I thought it was a good debate. Cruz went on to say that he would be happy to help the Trump campaign with debate prep.
Wow.
Saying he will do whatever is needed to defeat Clinton. So it went from vote your conscience in Cleveland to...
how can I help you, sir? Wow. You mean to tell me that a politician's going to do whatever's necessary to prolong his career in politics?
And I like Ted Cruz. I think he's a good senator.
Yeah, he's fine. He's fine. But, you know, his rationale, one of the reasons, because Beck and his buddies tried to nail him down and said, what changed between what you said in Cleveland to now that makes you feel like it's okay to back Trump wholeheartedly? Like, you can vote your conscience, and your conscience tells you to vote for Trump. And he talked about how Trump released on Friday, I guess, a new extended list.
Yes.
Of who he would nominate for the Supreme Court, and they're only coming off of that list. And Ted Cruz's name is not on there, which I think is interesting. So do you think they promised him another position in the administration? Or they're just saying you can keep your Senate seat and shut up, and maybe we'll agitate for you to be the Senate majority leader or minority leader and get rid of old Mitch McConnell? And speaking of, you know, the government might shut down on Friday, because they've once again managed to spend all the damn money that we sent them.
And there is, oh man, I wish I would have saved that piece. Apparently, Lindsey Graham is fine with that.
Oh, that's amazing. Hey, I say bring it on.
Oh, yeah, Lindsey Graham, because part of the reason why the government may shut down, part of the reason why he is fine with that, because there is no language in the next, what do they call that? The
continuing resolution.
The continuing resolution doesn't address the XM Bank.
Oh, good God. We can't let that stand.
Right. So,
I mean, meanwhile, the Democrats are making this an issue about giving Flint a whole bunch of money.
Really?
Because how do you fix... Oh, yeah. That's one of the items that they've been fighting over. So they're going to make this all about the mean old Republicans don't want to give money to the dumbass Democrats that ran that city and allowed their people to be poisoned. Which they'll never message correctly on the other side and say exactly what I just said. Oh, yeah, sure. Let's just divert people's money from Pennsylvania, from Indiana, from California to go pay for the mistakes of Democrat politicians that let their people drink poison. Seems reasonable. It's totally my fault that happened. Isn't it your fault too, Fingers?
No, absolutely.
It's disgusting. But they're going to parade parade of victims. Republicans are mean. I mean, when did that get resolved or all come out into the light? A year ago, maybe?
Yeah.
What have they been doing in the meantime?
Blaming
Why do they need
a
whole
finger pointing? Which goes back to what we've been saying now for a long time. Government doesn't give a shit about you.
Right.
If
this was a real emergency, you think they could have figured something out in the meantime. Right. Like gone back to the existing water source that they were using.
Right. They're too busy pointing fingers, trying to assess blame, and meanwhile, you're drinking lead-filled water. But really, they should be in charge of your health care.
Absolutely.
And educating your kids.
Oh, yeah, that too. Please. More of that. So we can learn about how to bake Betty Crocker stuff and sew a throw pillow. But not about, hey, don't get into a mortgage with a fluctuating APR. Oh, my God. It's insane. Here's how interest works, kids.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Don't take out 130%.
It's 103. Unbelievable.
No, but I mean, that's a low side, Fingers. People were taking out way more than that so they could furnish the whole joint, too.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I don't know what they called them, but when I sold cars, we had a loan structure that was called a balloon payment, which it starts out, your interest rates are low, and then they go up over time.
Right.
So that's not what it was called on the mortgage side, but they weren't fixed rate mortgages.
Yeah, they're ARMs, adjustable rate. Well, at least the rate. I don't know about the huge payment at the end, but I know in my case, I don't have a fixed mortgage. Yeah, I've had an adjustable rate mortgage for 15 years, and so far it's worked out pretty well for me. Right,
because interest rates have stayed artificially low.
Right.
But, I mean, if people can't even figure out a 15% tip without a calculator.
Jesus.
Or, I mean, even a 10% or 20% tip. 10% is easy. It's just moving the decimal point one place to the left. There you go. That's 10%. If you want to figure out 15, move the decimal place 1 to the left, then divide that by 2, then add it to the. I mean, people can't do that simple math. There's no way they're going to be able to understand what an arm is. None. And this is the kind of thing that you're never going to learn in school.
Of course not.
Because they want you to be in debt, and then so you can be angry, so they could talk to you about fair shares and raise taxes on the rich.
Don't worry about the pie and what slice you're getting and comparing it to the slice that someone else is getting. Bake your own fucking pie.
Right. Imagine that. They don't even want you to know that that's a possibility. That's why they use the metaphor of the pie.
Yeah.
Because a pie is, in essence, fixed. Like, have you ever seen a pie that gets bigger and bigger and bigger? No, you need to talk about, like, Octomom or something. So that people can understand that just expands beyond belief. And so it's always growing. And it's a difficult concept to grasp. I get that. It's very hard to come up with an accurate metaphor. So they've won that metaphor war. So much fun to look forward to.
And that's just debate number 1. Well, do you have anything else, Tracy?
I don't think so, Fingers. I mean, check through my notes real quickly because I did add some stuff in here, but I don't think so.
All right. Well, no Ash Scow this week. She has laryngitis.
Oh.
So somewhere in Washington, D.C., she's gargling salt water and maybe has a wool sock tied around her neck with Vicks Vapor Rub. I don't know. I don't know what you do with laryngitis. Never had laryngitis, Tracy.
Neither have I.
But she has it. She's not here this week. So I guess that's it. Remember, you can always catch the Enough Already podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, the TuneIn app, SoundCloud, and we have a new place you can find the Enough Already podcast, don't we, Tracy?
We do. That's Google Play.
Ooh.
I know.
We're part of the Google empire now?
Yes, maybe we'll get censored.
Fun.
Yes.
Music for the Enough Already podcast is provided by YoPaulyMusic.com. Check that out. I friended YoPauly Music on SoundCloud.
Uh-huh.
He's adding new tracks all the time.
Yeah, and if you need music for anything, you should hit up Polly, because I had a video yesterday that I had made, and I used public domain music. Yeah, it's I can't remember the original composer. It's the Blue Danube Waltz. So it was written 100-something years ago, public domain for such things. Everything goes into the public domain after a certain number of years. Whatever. I went to a public domain website, downloaded their version. Facebook won't let me post the video because it violates copyright.
Of course.
And I don't have time to sit and argue with them and say, no. I actually got it from this public domain site. So either they're lying or your algorithm that goes and listens to music is lying. Either way, I don't care. YouTube, let it stand. Done. So if you want to avoid that kind of stuff, go to Polly. He's got music. It's all over the place, from rap sounding music to jazzy sounding music to pop, anything you can think of. And maybe he would even compose something for you if you cough up a little change.
I bet he would. Follow me on Twitter at FingersMalloy. Follow Tracy on Twitter at Tracy L. Connors. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week.